Welcome to the Champions of Active Women podcast. In each episode, we share stories and experiences of active female role models and individuals who support the active pursuits of girls and women. Our goal is to encourage and inspire girls and women to be active for a lifetime, to reach their goals, and to break new barriers in sport and life. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative in the Sports Medicine Research Institute at the University of Kentucky. The mission of the Active Women's Health Initiative is to optimize health and promote physical activity and wellness for girls and women across the lifespan. If you enjoy this podcast, you can make a donation to the Active Women's Health Initiative at uky.networkforgood.com. Your contribution helps us empower all girls and women to find their inner athlete and become athletes for life. Today's guest, Brianne Smedley, is a certified female athlete confidence coach who works to empower and enable female athletes to cultivate true confidence, unlock their potential, and level up their performance across all aspects of their lives. Brianne played collegiate volleyball at Western Washington University, where she earned a degree in physical education and health and a master's in special education. As a former collegiate volleyball player and longtime coach, Brianne has experienced firsthand the unique struggles that female athletes face on the court and in life, which is why she and her sister-in-law founded The Elite Competitor, where they provide courses, programs, and community to help female athletes step into their power and thrive in their sport and in life. Welcome, Brianne. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on.
So if you could just begin by telling our audience about your journey with sports and physical activity throughout your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So sports have always been a big part of my life. I played a lot of sports like most of us through growing up, through adolescence. And when I got into high school, volleyball was the one that I was really drawn to. I started playing when I was a freshman and just loved it. So I quickly became a volleyball player, played year round, played club, all the things. And I actually played in college. It took me to Division II volleyball here in Washington State, which was amazing. However, my journey to get there was a little different. Like I said, immersed myself in volleyball in high school to the point where what I would tell people was got a little burned out and actually decided to quit playing after my senior season. And I turned down a lot of offers that I had to play in college. I was pretty talented, so I was getting a lot of looks, getting a lot of offers, and my coach was really excited, my parents were really excited about it, and that pressure, looking back now, like 12, 15 years removed, I can totally see what it was. At the time, I was like, I just don't want to let anybody down, and I don't want to get to college and be not as good as they thought I was going to be, and I'm just gonna turn it down now. It's easier for me to cut it off now rather than get into it and then let people down. So I stopped, but I decided to go to college just to be a student. And I missed volleyball so much. I went to every one of the matches, and I ended up going to a college of a very successful volleyball program. They were in the national championship that my freshman year. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I miss it so much. So I reached out to the coach and just asked, is there any way I could try out? Do you try out in college? I don't know. I just want to play. And she was like, yeah, she had kind of heard about me. And so I tried out with the team that January after they had just got the national runner-up. And she offered me a walk-on spot for the team. And I was ecstatic to get this walk-on spot, right?
Yeah.
That's not usually, right now it's oh, we want the scholarship and blah, blah, blah. But I was like, no, I'm just happy to be here. And so I worked hard those 4 years. By the time I was a senior, I was a full ride scholarship athlete. I was starting amazing volleyball program. And that's actually where I got a taste of mental training. So I'm going to get into that a little bit. I am an elite performance coach for female athletes. And in that program, I was able to kind of understand that these issues that I was experiencing, the pressure, why I quit in the first place, not wanting to let people down, perfectionism, all of these things are very normal. And I wasn't the only one that was experiencing them, and that I could actually, learn tools and strategies to help me in those situations. So started learning about sports psychology, became a coach right out of college, a head volleyball coach, and also quickly learned that coaches are not trained in how to help our
So
athletes
true.
with the mental side of the sport. So yeah, I mean, I could go on there, but then just realized like about 5 years into my head coaching career, I was like, okay, I can teach volleyball like until I'm blue in the face. And, if they can't actually perform when it comes to when it matters and, not be afraid of making mistakes in high pressure situations, like we're not getting anywhere. So I decided to, really seek out training and certifications and becoming an elite performance coach for female athletes. So that's what I did. And then I created a business out of it as well. So long
Yeah.
story short.
What a really interesting way that you've gotten to where you are today. And I think it shows so much courage to make a choice to go to college and then to say, okay, I want this other path and to figure out how to get there. So it's just such a cool story. So tell me a little bit about what drew you to coaching initially.
Yeah, what drew me to coaching initially was, and I'm also a PE teacher. And so I just like being active was just something that I felt like I couldn't be without. And like, it just makes sense for me to continue, coaching and being involved with the sport that I loved and all of that. But then beyond that, um, I saw myself in a lot of these young women, like I said, on the mental side of it as well. And I'm like, I get it. And I understand what it feels like to like feel like you're good physically, you have the talent potentially, or you're developing your talent, but like you don't believe in yourself and you are struggling with this feeling of not wanting to let people down and all of that. So I kind of saw myself in these athletes. And so that's kind of what drew me to it in the first place. Not that I had the answers from them. I had to like go seek that out. And I'm still, working through that on how I can provide these athletes with the tools that they need mentally to be able to perform physically. But that's what drew me to it in the first place.
So you mentioned the Elite Competitor, which is your business. And I'm wondering if you could tell us how that got started. You told us a little bit, but just talk to us about how that got started and how it's going now.
Right. Yeah. So it first started, so my sister-in-law, Christina, she runs the business with me. So we do this together. And we both have a passion for empowering and enabling women and specifically female athletes. And we also have a vision, we know that inspired and enabled women can really change the world. And we specifically know that women are faced with a lot of challenges that are hard to navigate, and especially women in sports and female athletes. Like there's a whole set of challenges that women face as they come into their own when they're playing sports, or what they're faced with when they're trying to be a leader in sports. And so we're just passionate about that whole like overarching vision of inspiring and enabling women. And then Christina is also a former collegiate athlete, and we kind of have that background together, that this is where it starts. And their sport is kind of that vehicle to helping them cultivate confidence in themselves, because it's kind of the ultimate thing that like it's tangible. They're in it every day. They can see the successes and the failures on the court. Like they're struggling through it. Like all of those things that they do on the court obviously transfer to what they're experiencing in life. And so if we can give them those tools on the court, or the field, or wherever they compete, we know that they're transferable to when they're done with their sport and in any other area of their life. So we decided we're going to join forces, and this is where we want to start. And we hit the ground running 3 years ago, and it's been amazing. And running a business is fun and challenging and overwhelming. And, we're at a point now where our business is, we're serving thousands of athletes and their moms. Half of our business is for the athlete herself, and then the other half is for her mom, because we know that the moms impact their athletes' experience a lot. So yeah, it's been really fun.
So that was my next question. You led right into it. So in what ways, you've chosen to work with moms and daughters. So what are you doing with those two groups? And I guess how are moms, what did you see about moms that was impacting daughters that you knew you wanted to work with both of those populations?
Right. Well, first, the moms would come to us and be like, how do I help develop confidence in my daughter? And she doesn't see her potential and all this. And we know, and the research tells us that like daughters are heavily shaped and influenced by their mom's confidence in themselves and what they're modeling, what their thoughts that they're thinking, how they are showing up, what they're saying out loud, their actions that they're taking. And so we knew that like we had to actually start with the moms somehow. And so we have a program for the athletes. So we have the elite competitor program where they learn like all of the tools and strategies, like tangible things that they can be doing to help perform under pressure, cut down their limiting beliefs, improve their self-talk. They learn how to use breath work and visualization, like all of these like very tangible skills. But then when the athletes go through the program, their moms also get connected with us in another group program where we coach them. And so we coach them side by side. And we meet with them on a monthly Zoom call. They also get a lot of training materials within our group as well. They connect with each other to kind of talk about like, what they're experiencing from the mom perspective. And really what we're teaching the moms is kind of like the same thing that we're teaching the daughters, but it's now the moms. So we're teaching them how to, change their own self-talk, what their confidence looks like, what they can be saying that's productive about themselves, really, like, because we know, and especially when it comes to like issues like body language or body image, all of those things just transfer right down to our daughters. So we coach them through all of that. And then the tangible things like, what should we say before, during, and after our daughters are competing? And most of the time it's like, listen twice as much as you say and don't say anything. So that's kind of how we coach them alongside their daughters.
Yeah. So what would you say are some of the biggest challenges that you see as you work with female athletes and their moms?
Yeah, one of the biggest, this is hard, especially with the population that we work with, which is typically freshmen, like middle school going into their freshman year. Something changes around that time where all of a sudden they're like, they don't want to be good anymore. I don't know if this sounds familiar, but they're like, I want to be good, but not too good because I don't want my teammates to like be mad at me for being good or like stealing the spotlight. And so there's a lot of that, like they're very aware of what they think other people are thinking of them. And so, whereas where we see like lower middle school or even, elementary, they're just like playing with this reckless abandon. They don't care. They're like, this is just fun. Like, why would I hold back at all? And now all of a sudden they're like, even though these athletes are like saying they want to play in college and they're very talented, they're like, I'm just going to rein it back a little because when I go off and like, I'm really good, like all of a sudden I have these like 4 girls that are mad at me. And so they're like navigating that is a huge one, and having athletes understand and realize that anytime that you are doing anything at all, like you're going to have people talking, the only way the only way to avoid that is just like to not do anything. And so to kind of own like their power and just be and know that like, yep, that's going to happen. That actually means you're on the right track rather than stopping. And so that's a tough one. The whole leadership thing too is kind of related to that, but like, how do I lead without people thinking I'm bossy? Because typically, my husband is the head football coach at the same school that I'm head volleyball coach. And when I tell him these things, he's like, what? My guys like, don't ever like think about being too good, or like if they're speaking up, like they don't call them bossy, they call them a leader,
Mm-hmm.
And so helping our female athletes, how can I lead without feeling like I'm just stepping on people's toes and taking over and being bossy. So that's a huge one. The third one, there's probably more. I mean, we talk about like perfectionism, expectations, like there's all of that, but body image is a huge one too. Like just, people commenting on bodies, or like what type of body type you should have to play a certain sport, and trying to kind of like fit into that mold, or comparing bodies to teammates or things like that. That's a big one too. So that's kind of what we see with female athletes. Their moms are connected to it as well, because they see it and they're like, what do I do? And their daughter's lives sometimes eclipse their own, and they kind of see like, this is what I experienced too, and now my daughter's experiencing it, and how do I break the cycle?
So you're obviously addressing a lot of topics with the female athletes and their moms. If you could give just a couple tips to moms and their daughters, or simplify it in some way, what would you say?
Yeah, to simplify it for moms, I would say, when I say this, sometimes moms go to a place of guilt because they're like, oh my gosh, I'm like messing up my daughter. You're not. You're the perfect mom for your daughter. And, the fact that you're even like listening to this right now means that you're invested in helping your daughter. But be very aware and intentional with what you say out loud about yourself. And a lot of times we think, well, I'm telling my daughter that she's smart and beautiful and capable and athletic and great. Okay, she hears that, okay, but she hears even more what you say about yourself. So if you are saying things like, I'm just lazy, my arms are flabby, like I just can't find the motivation to do anything, or that, like just all of these things, like that is what your daughter hears, because she is like, well, am I going to be like that when I'm old? That's just like the model that you're giving her. So what we always tell our moms is what we say out loud becomes our daughter's inner voice. And we don't really get to choose when what we say out loud pops into our daughter's brains. And it's usually at the critical moments, when she's down on herself, or she has to go back and serve game point, and it's, a pressure situation. Like all of a sudden her inner voice, her inner thoughts are what we have said out loud. So we just want to be, that's simple, but it's also like takes some awareness. So that would be my one tip for moms. And then I guess for everybody and for daughters is that we say all the time, you are not your thoughts. And we know how important self-talk is in connection with confidence. And so we think 50,000 things to ourselves a day, probably even more. And we get to choose what we focus on and what we don't. And a lot of times we think that every single thought that pops into our head is valid and truthful, and we should just wear it with us always, but we don't have to. And a lot of times thoughts that pop into our heads are things that come from other people, or something that somebody told us years and years and years ago, but we're just like thinking it anyway. So we tell our athletes all the time just to imagine, I'm sure you've heard this, but imagine like they're clouds floating through. Some of them are bigger, some of them stick around for a little bit longer, but eventually they'll pass, and we get to choose which ones we want to focus on. So
good advice to boil it down for people who maybe just need one thing to focus on.
Right.
So you were a collegiate athlete yourself, and you told us the story of how you got there. But what do you bring from that experience into your current career?
So much. I can't even imagine what it would be like if I didn't play sports. And then like collegiately, especially, I just learned a lot about myself and what I'm capable of. I draw on that experience a lot just to prove I have done really hard things, and my college volleyball experience is one of them. While it brought me so much joy and like my best friends, my best connections, and so many great things, it also was really difficult in a lot of ways. And when your sport kind of overtakes everything, and it's even just the grind of like practicing and playing year round and all of that is just hard. And like I said, amazing at most of the time, the most amazing things also have a side of that is hard. And so I think just like that proof that I can do it, and going from like a walk-on to a full-ride scholarship athlete, I use that a lot, like in the business too. And like, we get to start at ground zero, nothing, and we get to build. And so I think that, and then also like leadership, empowerment, that's like kind of where the whole passion for enabling female athletes has come from, is that just like seeing how amazing it is to be in a community of female athletes led by a really powerful and awesome coach, like how what we can accomplish together. And all of my teammates from that time, I mean, are all doing amazing things. A lot of them are coaches themselves, like very successful coaches. A lot of them own businesses, like just to kind of see like how, that connection and seeing how amazing we can be together. Like I draw on that all the time. So.
So our Active Women's Health Initiative is very much interested in getting girls and women to be active, and not just through athletics, but throughout their life. And so I'm wondering, you're an example of someone who's a mom, a business owner, a coach. You are existing in this world of athletics that is, knows no boundaries with your time. So I'm wondering how you keep it all balanced. How do you stay healthy, well, and keep things in perspective?
Yeah, like I said, this is probably the hardest question that you've asked me so far, because it like I've mentioned a little bit about how like I've had some perfectionistic tendencies, and like most female athletes, and especially most high achieving female athletes, and so I've had to get away from this thought that it all gets done perfectly, and so I've boiled it down to like, what are the most essential things. And one book that I've read that actually has been very helpful in this is Essentialism. And so if you're looking on, how to boil it down to what's most important, Essentialism, like the art of, I think it's like doing what matters. So I'm like, okay, what is most important? And family is most important. And so how can I prioritize the connections there? And so for us, that's dinner time. So if I can be home, if I can protect that dinner, and during the season, it's very hard, right? Because we have practices and games, but, out of season, how can we protect that time where we're connecting there at a minimum, right? And then one day on the weekends too, like either Saturday or Sunday, because especially during the season, it's hard not to, but like one of those days needs to be like for family. And then exercise. Okay, I don't have time to spend hours at the gym. So, we have a Peloton, and my 20 minutes, 4 times a week. That is my minimum. If I get more than that, that's okay. Like, that's great. Yeah. And then, so I just kind of put these boundaries around like, all right, home cooked meals. All right, I don't have time to do it always, but we're going to aim for 4 times a week, cooking and eating at home. And, if we hit that, that's great. And then I outsource some things too. Like if we're going to go there, like I realized that trading my money for time, for having help around the house, like to clean and keep things like going, is where I want to invest some of my money too. So we do that. And then, as far as like, balancing, there's business, work, coaching, at some point right now, the business is growing so much that it's going to have to take place of one of those things. So we're kind of at that tipping point right now where like they're all, teaching and coaching, it takes up a lot of time. Business now is like growing into that area. So now I have to take a hard look at like, okay, I physically can't do it all. So what is the most important right now as far as like our long-term goals of enabling, inspiring as many female athletes as possible? And how can I leverage that?
Yeah. So. Lots of good lessons there. And I love a good book recommendation. So I'll be checking that one out for sure. Yeah. So thinking back and being a little reflective here in this next question, what do you wish that you knew as a youth athlete?
I wish that I knew that the things that I was thinking in my head and experiencing were normal, and I think that there's a lot now. I think youth athletes are met with a lot of different challenges, but one good thing that I think has come up is like the whole spotlight on mental health. And I think more athletes now realize that like, they need to be in tune with how they're feeling and what they're thinking. So there's been more of a spotlight on it, but I still think that a lot of athletes think that they're the only ones that experience like nervousness and pressure and thoughts of not wanting to let people down and burnout and wondering like, hey, should I pull back a little bit from my sport? Like, but my coaches might not like that, or my parents might not like, so I wish then that somebody were to tell me like, yeah, these are all like every athlete experiences this, like Olympic athletes talk about how they still have thoughts of doubt and fear and, but the difference is now this is, and what we do in our business is to equip athletes with strategies that they can use to navigate those things, because all athletes face them. Like any athlete that we've talked to has faced these thoughts of like not feeling good enough, or, getting pregame nerves and things like that. So yeah, I wish somebody would tell me like, hey, that's normal. So.
It would have been really simple, right? It could have avoided a lot of negative thinking. So we've covered a lot of ground today. What do you think are maybe the one or two things that you hope our audience takes away?
So when we talk about elite performance in our business, we say it's kind of, we say two things. It's like an equation. So it's the physical, the knowledge of the sport, and the mental training and mental side of it. And they're all multiplied by each other. So physical times knowledge of the sport times mental training. And physical training is obviously like practice. Most people check that box really easily. Knowledge of the sport too comes with time. Like that's talking about like strategy, tactics, things like that. And then the mental training are these skills that athletes have to manage their emotions, to be able to, handle pressure, think positively or productively, all of those things. And they all multiply each other. But if any one of them is at zero, the whole thing is at zero. And so that's why sometimes we think like, well, we'll just invest more in like physical training and like, just work harder. That's where it's at. But if the mental training is at zero, or really any of them, if physical training is at zero, then our athletes are never going to reach their full potential of what they could be. And so investing in the mental side of the game is so, so important. And it really is, all three of them, but really we can't get there without having all three. So.
I love that explanation, because I'm also thinking, okay, so maybe it's not a zero, right? But even if it's low and you make a tiny change, if it's multiplied, they're all multiplied by each other. That tiny change could make a big difference across the whole equation for performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And that can be as simple as like learning how to breathe correctly, when a challenging emotion comes along. So,
and it seems so much more manageable, right? Like improving mental health seems like this big, huge topic, but what you've done is made it very practical, it sounds like, and very strategy focused, so that athletes feel like they can do it.
Right. Yeah, exactly. A lot of these things are not rocket science. They're research based and science, based in science, but it's not like, you have to change like a million things. So, yeah.
Well, if someone in our audience wants to connect with you, how could they get in touch with you?
So we have actually created a special page for listeners. So if you go to, and I'll shoot this over to you so you can put it in the show notes.
Okay, great.
So it's ChristinaBreanne.com/champions. So for listeners of Champions of Active Women, if you go there, you will find there's a free resource on there for athletes and for moms. And then there's how you can get connected to our free community. I go in live there and do free trainings every week for moms of female athletes. And there's information about our elite competitor program for moms and female athletes on there too. So if you go there, that has all the contact info. My Instagram is Breanne Smedley. And so I post a lot on there, just informational things that are helpful. So, yeah.
Great. Well, I enjoyed our conversation today, and thank you for sharing, and thank you for your work with youth athletes and their moms.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for listening to the Champions of Active Women podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Active Women's Health Initiative and the Sports Medicine Research Institute within the College of Health Sciences at the University of Kentucky. This episode was produced by the Faculty Media Depot. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share with your social networks, or simply tell a friend about us. If you want to help us sustain the Champions of Active Women podcast, donate to the Active Women's Health Initiative at uky.networkforgood.com. For up-to-date information about our initiative, follow us on social media at UKAWHI. Thank you for joining us as we empower all girls and women to become athletes for life.